Today's interview is brought to you by the guys over at Psychotoxin Press. No matter what you're into, they have a story for you. Everything from shorts to novellas to full length novels written by indie horror authors. Please check them out and go ahead and use the promo code HorrorRem10 to get you 10% off of your first order. Check them out, www.psychotoxinpress, or click down on the link in the description below. Hey everyone, welcome to the Horror Realm. I'm Travis Bruce, and today I have a special guest with us. Today I have a horror indie author. He has a new horror wrestling novel. It's called A Tale from the Road. I have with us today Rocky Cololito. Rocky, welcome to the Horror Realm.
Happy to be here, Travis.
Nice to meet you, man. And tell us a little bit about A Tale from the Road.
Okay. Well, if people remember way back in the 1960s, there was a filmmaker named Herschel Gordon Lewis, and he was regarded as one of the first people to make what are now known as slasher films, splatter movies, that type of thing. He did his first film was called Blood Feast, and it it's grimy, it's grody, the effects suck, but it got him noticed. And then he follows that up with a film called 2000 Maniacs. 2000 Maniacs takes the notion that there is a southern town that was wiped out in the Civil War, and every few years the town rematerializes. It's like Brigadoon, okay, if you remember the old Broadway
I'm a,
show.
I'm a huge fan of 2000 Maniacs.
Okay, good. So you know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, into this sort of situation is thrust a group of wrestlers from a regional promotion. You've got everybody from these veterans who are kind of the pillars of the promotion to a bunch of a bunch of kids who are experiencing regional wrestling for the first time. And so they get contracted to go to this town. And it turns out to be, well, it seems very bucolic, and it's got some new stuff, like it's got a new uh, event center. But on the way, they've stopped to pick up materials to bring with them, and the first inkling of trouble is that they find out that their promoter has signed them up to do extreme hardcore matches. Well, none of the other wrestlers know about it, so the veterans take it upon themselves to explain how to wrestle one of those kind of matches. And then they get there and they get treated really well. The mayor is also the sheriff, and they have this huge meal prepared for them, and they're all partaking, and then they've set things up where some of the nubile young townswomen decide they're going to entertain the wrestlers, and the two veterans get bad feelings about it. And so then they get told what they want. They get a clearer idea of what's wanted in the card, and so they have a training session during the day where the veterans teach um the younger guys, how to fly into glass and not hurt yourself, how to hit somebody with like a ball bat or something like that. So they have all this, and then they get to the matches, and it's well beyond what they've expected. You've heard of fans bring the weapons matches, and you've heard of lumberjack matches where wrestlers surround the ring. Well, these are those sorts of matches with the fans being heavily involved and carrying off wrestlers from the ring and eating them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and there's some pretty nasty stuff that occurs in there. I won't give you the best gory details, but there's a scene where um this guy, his ring name is Baby Hugely, and he's basically dressed as a big baby with a diaper and whatnot, and he has to wrestle a barbed wire match where the diaper gets snagged in the barbed wire and gets pulled off, and he's staying with his gimmick, and he's walking around with his thumb in his mouth with in a jock. So, and he gets eaten. He actually, people overeat on him and start I think I put this in there. They start gorging on him and they do binge and purge.
Wow.
I think I put that in there. I
Now,
that one was like several books back. I've just been working like crazy this last year, trying to get as much out there as I can, and so this was one of them. And Chris Pelton read it from Psychotoxin Press. Read it.
my
He
buddy
liked
Chris.
it, and so now I've got a thing going with Psychotoxin Press. One of the things I've got to do over Thanksgiving is get this humongous collection of wrestling stories that I compiled over the years. Um, and it's something that I've always been threatening to do. It's called Squared Circles of Hell, and it's short stories and novellas that I organized like a wrestling card. So we've got the curtain jerk match. We have a comedy match. We have um, all kinds of stuff, and it's got spores from outer space, um, zombies, a father and son serial killer team. Um,
Nice.
so it's all over the place, but it was fun to write. So you can maybe look for that whenever Chris gets around to getting it out. I'm hoping to deliver it by after Thanksgiving as well. So you can maybe look for that in the
I'm
coming year.
definitely gonna check it out. Now I got a chance to read a little bit of your stuff, so fair warning to my viewers, his stuff is pretty fucking hardcore, and it's pretty hardcore. Um, Now you're the second individual that I've interviewed that does the wrestling horror. This is something that I did not even know was a thing, and I'm a huge wrestling fan as well as a horror fan. So to mix the two together I mean, because most wrestling fans are horror fans, most horror fans are wrestling fans. So I mean, it's a common. You go to any horror conventions, there's always wrestlers there as well.
Mm-hmm.
It just goes hand in hand. So, what made you think to combine wrestling and horror together?
That's easy. Okay. I have been an on and off wrestling fan, since I was really young, like 8, 9 years old. And we had a studio wrestling program that was um, from the NWF, the National Wrestling Federation. And it ran Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Buffalo, and we got the feed in Rochester. And so during the course of this one afternoon, I was exposed to, through the show, a very young version of Abdullah the Butcher.
Yes, I know.
And they had a guy who did the Scufflin' Hillbilly gimmick. His name was Little Abner Osborne. And Abdullah and Little Abner got crossways. And Abby fireballed him. And I have remembered the announcer just screaming with Little Abner writhing on the floor. batting at his eyes and everything. He threw fire in little Abner's eyes. He threw fire in little Abner's eyes. And the screen went to black, and you could still hear the guy screaming, he threw fire in little Abner's eyes. That kind of stuck with me. Not because of Abdullah the Butcher, but because of what Abdullah the Butcher did. So I started, that was the only wrestling I could get. We didn't have cable. We couldn't get WWF on MSG, so you got me doing it now.
I know, contagious, man. It's that time of the year. It's just
And
no.
Okay, so through various times in my life, I've wandered back into wrestling, and consume the various monsters. You talk about wrestling fans being horror fans and the wrestlers themselves being at the cons. Wrestling has always employed the concept of monsters. You either have, someone who is built up to be someone who's human but is built up to be a monster that no one can vanquish. I mean, we might think of the Undertaker first of all, but
Yes.
prior to that, prior to the Undertaker, they had all sorts of regional characters that were essentially monstrous. They had a guy that did a run through Memphis, the Mid-South, and the Continental Territory, who was basically a riff on that character from the Road Warrior, Humongous, the guy with the hockey mask.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the first things that Sid Vicious did, was that gimmick.
Yes.
So that's just one example.
Even Vader was built like a monster. It was built as a monster.
Yes, with that head, with that dress and everything. I mean, you've got Kamala. I'm trying to think of some of these other ones.
Elegante, a lot of those guys were built up as
the
monsters.
Boogeyman from WWE.
Yes.
So
Mankind. I mean, a hardcore legend, Mick Foley.
Yeah. So this has always been a trope that's part of wrestling. Your listeners may know this, they may not know this. I'm also an academic. I have a PhD.
Oh, really?
Yes. And one of the things that I do scholarship on is professional wrestling. I'm a member of the Professional Wrestling Studies Association, and they have this little mini conference every year that's free, and it's virtual. It's the weekend after WrestleMania. It's called WrestlePosium. And so every year since its inception, I've been presenting at that. So I just started. I revisited wrestling when that that organization came into being, and so a lot of the stuff that I've done dealt with the monstrous nature of professional wrestling and professional wrestlers. As you study the history of professional wrestling, there, and if you watch Dark Side of the Ring,
I love it. Yes.
There's a ton of really scary shit that's gone on in there. I mean,
horror stories, especially with the drugs. I mean, the drugs, the domestic violence, the murders, suicides. It's a lot of scary stuff that goes. And
but even the survivors. If you watch the episode on Jake the Snake Roberts' family, his stepmother fucked him.
Wow.
His father was this famous wrestler named Grizzly Smith, and the documentary alleges that he groomed little girls and would take them on the road with him. Okay. It's so much scarier than anything that I can come up with. It's just, living life that Jake had to. There's another one on there, the one on Luna Vachon. Luna Vachon, if you credit the documentary, had an undiagnosed or ignored mental illness, and she was exploited despite the fact that she had this and it was not diagnosed. Moolah pimped out, trained women wrestlers and pimped them out.
Well, I mean, I definitely know that, but yeah, the Great Moolah, who was the first woman wrestler. I mean, she was training women wrestlers, and she was grooming them to be prostitutes. She was pimping them out to the promoters, and yeah, it was almost like a cult like mentality. She had these women like in a cult like scenario where they couldn't go nowhere, they couldn't do anything, and she would never allow them to get as big as she was.
Yeah. I mean, and you don't have to look very hard to find really nasty stuff associated with professional wrestling. Like, no one's okay. Here's ground to be tilled if you're going to write wrestling horror. Take a look at all the wrestlers that had heart-related issues because they juiced.
Majority of them, a lot of them. Ultimate Warrior, I mean, Macho Man. I mean, the list goes on and on.
I mean, yeah, those are more contemporary. But there was a guy who wrestled in Canada, African American guy named Lethal Larry Cameron, and he could have been the equivalent of the Junkyard Dog. He was that good. I mean, not Junkyard Dog WWE. We're talking Junkyard Dog Mid-South.
NWA, yes.
And that's, that kind of stuff is scary to me when, you see these guys, and he died when he was in his 30s. I mean, having a heart attack in your 30s, that's either the medicine of the medical practices of the time that didn't look for those sorts of heart issues, or that's choosing to try to get ahead. But he was really good. And I mean, there's all sorts of stories about that. I mean, Bad News Brown, who had a run in the WWF when it was the WWF. That guy was an Olympic judoist, and I mean, he was as scary as Haku is. Who, basically, Haku could kill you with a look.
Yeah, he was a dangerous man. He was he wasn't a fake badass. He was a real badass.
Story about what he did to Jesse Barr, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Those of you that aren't clued in, Jesse Barr was running his mouth in a bar. I think it was in Puerto Rico, and Haku just got sick of him running his mouth and reached up and yanked his eye out.
Yeah.
And then pushed it back in. So there's no end of scary stuff that you can write about with respect to wrestling. I just hosted a reading last night with a guy who was an alum of where I work, and his first novel is wrestling adjacent. It's a thriller, and it's about these 5 wrestlers that run afoul of these meth chemists in rural West Virginia. Definitely recommend this. I'm going to give the guy a shout out. It's called Blood in the Holler, and the author is named David Sangio Parga.
Okay.
All right.
Definitely check that out.
Florida. He's been a consistent wrestling fan most of his life. He used to draft and plot matches on paper just for fun when he was in college, which is what a lot of people who are doing this do. Who was the first one you interviewed? Was it Stephen Cooper or was it Lucas Mangum?
Individual I interviewed, his name was, I'm gonna have to look my notes now because I've done so many interviews.
Okay.
Name was Was it?
Sorry, I put you on the spot
I know
there.
you put me on a spot. I want to say it was. Was it Matthew Gleason?
Look him up because I know Lucas.
Yeah, I'll look him up. But he's under. He's with Psychotoxin as well.
Uh-huh.
Press. Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to check. I'll have to check the
He did a
back.
book. Hold on, I know his name. He did a book that was called My Father's Figure. Dan Fears.
Oh yeah, yeah. Dan and I are good friends. We've been threatening to work on something, wrestling related, for a while now, and it's just never gotten off the ground because our schedules never seem to align. But he's got good stuff.
He does.
He he used to EFED. Okay.
Really?
Yeah, he used to write for EFEDs, and he's got a lot of street cred with that going for him. And I keep pushing him and pushing him. You got to write this wrestling stuff. He's got a really good idea that he's gestating right now, and his he'll be a voice in there. And I'll be glad to have him, along with the rest of us that are doing this. Steve Cooper, the guy who reviewed Shards of Shattered Dolls so favorably, wrote something called Blood Soaked Wrestling, which is basically what I did in A Tale from the Road, with a focus more on the individual matches than the interplay with the people.
Nice.
Mine is about the matches, but it's also a question of who will survive and what's going to be left of them.
Nice. Now, have you seen Kill City Cup?
No, I have not.
Have you heard of it?
Tell me about it.
Okay. I actually interviewed him. It's an indie. I guess it's a horror film. It's a wrestling film, and it's wrestling matches, but they're to the death. And it's a very interesting, and it looks like you're watching an actual wrestling, television show, but it's like death matches. So, by the way, I'm giving them a shout out. Kill City Cup.
I'll look that one up.
It's on YouTube for free, actually. So, check it out.
Monster Brawl. Okay, I don't know if you've heard of that. It was kind of a horror wrestling adjacent film where they have these monsters face off in wrestling matches.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and Dave Foley is the commentator. And they're real wrestlers. They're legit wrestlers that know what they're doing. So it's silly, but the wrestling stuff is credible. Kevin Nash is in it. The woman who's Rosemary in TNA Impact, she was in it.
Okay.
They have a couple of women wrestlers, so it's fun. But okay, for your listeners and you, if you don't know this one, I'll tell you one of the most unsettling movies I've ever seen. It's a documentary.
Okay.
It's called The Trade. Okay.
Tell me about it.
Pardon me?
I said, tell me about The Train. I'm writing it down.
Trade. Okay. It's focused on a hardcore wrestler whose ring moniker was Sick Nick Mondo. And the interesting thing is, Sick Nick Mondo made the movie. He was the producer, director, and he starred. His name is Matt Burns. He does video work for AEW now. And it is by degrees nasty because they show all this hardcore stuff that he would do. One of the big scenes in there is him getting attacked by a guy who's wielding a weed whacker.
Whoa.
And you can see it raising the welts on his bare chest. Um, there's a scene where he gets this move done on him off the top of a warehouse into a flaming table. And I mean, these guys. Okay, you think what Mankind did off the top of that cage was something?
Hmm.
You ain't seen nothing without seeing these guys. But it's all about his journey to self-understanding and the realization that when he sees this younger wrestler who's adopted the gimmick of his younger brother, he says, "Okay, I've got to change. I've got to do something to stop the cycle." The trade, it's really, really good.
I'm
His
gonna
name,
check
his
that.
out of the ring name is Matt Burns, and that's what he goes by right now. So I highly recommend that.
I'm gonna check that out. Now, Rocket, so I have a question. All right, so like I said, I read some of your stuff, and your stuff is pretty hardcore. How do you get these hardcore images in your head? I mean, when you started putting it on paper, you're like, do you think like I'm going to make this as extreme as fuck, and I want the readers to be a little disturbed?
Yeah, I do. Um, as Dan Fierce has blurbed for me, WTF is wrong with you, Rocky? Um, you know, I'm not a violent person per se. Okay. I mean, I studied martial arts for a while because I had an anger management problem. I don't really have that problem like I used to. But I am really fascinated by body horror. I'm very big into David Cronenberg. Videodrome is, you know, classic status for me. And you know, I know it's going to be one of these cop outs, but I honestly do not know where that stuff comes from. It's not something embedded within me. I mean, you're not talking to Patrick Bateman here, okay? Um, but there is a part of me that, you know, is is kind of under the thrall of, the work of the early splatter punks. That's where I got first interested in this, and my other gateway drug was more extreme zombie films. Okay, and then I discovered giallos, which which went with the sorts of intimate violence that you can have. And so I just started building on it. Okay. And I just added a layer of, um, call it eroticism, call it sex, call it whatever you want, that basically goes over the saw traps or the Jason or, Freddy or the Jason kills that I
Mhm.
have in my work. Okay. Um, you know, Giallo films were these interesting sorts of things that had, you know, they were very artistic. And I mean, yeah, people die in them, but there's always a couple of deaths that are super artistic. They put a lot of time and thought into how these people died. Okay. Um, and sometimes they don't show the deaths on screen, they just show the after effects. The film that I watched as research for Classes After Dark is a film called What Have You Done to Solange? Okay. And do you remember the Sleepaway Camp films?
Yes,
Do
yes,
you remember it was the first one, the scene with the curling iron?
yes.
Okay. Well, I'm pretty sure that the people that made Sleepaway Camp saw What Have You Done to Solange? Okay. because there's a scene in there and you don't see it happen, but you see the X-ray. One of the victims is stabbed in the crotch with this long knife, and they show the X-ray of the knife still embedded in the victim. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
now that's pretty visceral. That's pretty nasty. It's definitely invasive, and it's definitely unsettling. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but it is incredibly artistic the way they handled it,
Yes.
because you see the after effects. You don't see
See the
him
actual.
hurting the knife. In a
Yeah.
lot of ways, it's very much like what Psycho did, where when they shot the shower scene, everybody says, "Oh well, she got she had all she got stabbed." It's like, well, you never saw the knife go into her.
No.
Okay, um, so I appreciated the edginess that the splatterpunks have, and the current um, crop of extreme horror writers have. Really, the Night Scavengers was a product of Judith Sonnet's 10-day novella challenge. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
um, Judith is part of the splatter crew. Uh, Otis Bateman, um, Brian Barry, Candace Nola, Christo Healy, lots of other folks in this group. And every so often, Judith does this 10-day novella challenge where people who are participating are challenged to draft, edit, and publish a novella in 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they put out uh, a trio of works called Splatter Crime, and these are all very, very influenced by another thing that I'm really interested in, which is grindhouse films.
Love them.
And so, and we know all about what grindhouse films were. That was where we got our what amounted to transgressive filmmaking. So I emailed Judith and I said, okay, can I coattail? Okay, I'm not going to try to write splatter crime per se, but can I coattail on trying the challenge? And that's where Night Scavengers came from. I said, they
Nice.
did all these really cool crime oriented books. What can I do? And then that's just when it hit me. New York Ripper. Okay. Um, which is exactly the sort of setting that I wanted to try to do. And if you credit the reviews, I got the setting. The world building is spot on in these things for urban noir. All right. And so that's just what I did. I have a serial killer who basically takes his victims and turns them into art pieces. Okay.
Pretty extreme.
And makes these elaborate public tableau with them. All right. The first killing is he takes and um, you know, uh attaches the victim to the front of a minivan and makes it look like roadkill. Or like one of those, you ever seen hunters that lash their deer to
Yeah.
the front of
Mm-hmm.
the truck? That's essentially what he does. Is he turns the woman into a deer. You know, he like stabs antlers into her, and who replaces her hands with hooves and things like that. Um, and he puts it in a public place, and it's an art piece.
So let me tell my viewers something. So Rocky's and I's first conversation was, he was like, I was like, hey, send me some of your work already. And he goes, my shit is pretty fucking extreme. And I'm like this. I'm like, well, listen, I'm pretty sure I've seen some extreme shit before. So listen, he's like, nice, fucking extreme. I'm like, listen, dude, trust me. I was a mortician. I fucking seen extreme shit. and I'm fucking reading it, and the first one I read it was the Snuff Island or something like that. It was about the porn stars
Snuff
on the
and stuff.
island.
Yeah,
What's that? What it's called?
snuff and stuff.
Snuff and stuff. And I'm reading, so I'm like, oh, what the fuck am I reading? I'm like, what the fuck am I reading? Like, this is this is fucking this is fucking insane. I'm like, what the fuck is this? I'm like, okay, okay, this is more extreme than I was thinking of. Okay, he got me. Rocky, you got me on extreme. Good job.
I'd like to think that it's not just extreme for the sake of extreme. It's extreme with I always try to put a patina of art over it.
It is. It's artistic extreme. It's definitely there's some art behind. It's an artistic extreme. Yes, it is. It is.
Okay.
It's not for the faint of heart, though.
Oh God, no. I mean, let me get on my soapbox about trigger warnings just for a second. Okay. I'm really of the opinion that okay, I shouldn't have to use a trigger warning simply because I mean adults set their own boundaries and set their own limits, and if they run into something like the art scene, the arts and crafts scene in the first chapter of The Night Scavengers, they're going to say, okay, that's more than I can handle, I'm going to stop reading.
By the way, real quick too, Rocky was the first person to ever the first time I've ever heard the term trigger warnings, and I was like, what does that mean? And then you're like, never mind, because I never heard of this. I had to research what that means. I did not know trigger warning is a fucking thing. I didn't know that's a fucking thing. But okay.
Well,
Go ahead.
Being an academic who teaches horror stuff, I have to be on top of this type of thing.
Yeah.
Because there's this huge discussion over how much power I wield in the classroom and what I can do to students if they don't follow directions and things like that. And I mean, you have to acknowledge the fact that students feel this way and everything. But I have it very clear in my class. Okay. And my class says, you aren't required to read something that that encroaches on your limits.
Mm-hmm.
Don't read it. All right. Save yourself the trouble. Okay. I mean, what I don't want is people reading something and then coming back and saying, this traumatized me. And I'm like, well, okay, you were warned prior and you were told to set your own limits.
Yeah.
And not go beyond. Okay. So I mean, you tell me that I got to give people trigger warnings, and I'm just like, eh.
I didn't know what that even meant, but I'm glad that But no, okay. Trigger warnings, yes. Trigger warnings should definitely be put on any of Rocky's work. It is not for the faint of heart. It's not for if you're easily queasy or if you get scared from the simplest things, haunted houses or anything like that. You should definitely not even read a chapter of Rocky Horror. But if you like horror, if you like extreme, but if you love horror, you're a hardcore horror fan. Rocky shit is right up your alley.
See, here's the thing, and I put this stuff on there very clearly. And I get into these discussions all the time because my work is all over the place. Okay. I just got notification today of something that was picked up by Siren's Call. And it's about the last two people in a world that has been overtaken by something that freezes everything. And they're the last two people. And it's basically a conversation between the two of them about how it happened. And it ultimately ends with them both freezing to death. I mean, it's not extreme in any way, shape, or fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have the whole aim has been okay. See, Travis, I've only been doing this really for 2 years.
You've done a lot in those 2 years, which is I'm going to ask you about that soon too.
Okay. I mean, I had my first my first publication was in Dark Dossier. That was around 4 or 5 years ago. It was a Sasquatch story. I didn't really start accumulating stuff until I took a couple of online writing groups, Monaria's Fright Club, which is very good, incidentally. And so I turned all these stories from that, and I started placing the various places. I had 2 sales right out the chute from those experiences. One was a piece of flash fiction, which was basically a screed against toxic positivity, if there is such a thing. It's written from the perspective of somebody who's in a relationship with one of those people that is endlessly optimistic and always affirmative and gives you, like, that they'll tell you, well, the room might be full of shit, but look for the pony.
Yeah.
Those type of people.
Those people.
Yeah. And so that I sold that. And then there was this, and this is what really, really started it for me. I hate friggin' vampires, okay? If you ask me what's your least favorite monster, I'm going to say it's vampires.
Okay.
Okay. Listeners, just remember, okay? Here's a question for you. Why is the idea of sleeping with a vampire so enticing, but the idea of sleeping with a zombie repels you? It's still necrophilia.
It really is.
So anyway, we got challenged to, we're asked to write a story involving a traditional monster. And so I wrote this noirish. It's really a scene more than anything else because of what happened with it. But it's a private detective who used to be a porn star. And he is searching for this woman who came into his office. It's stock, any sort of 30s noir detective film where the woman comes into the office and then disappears, and the private detective decides that he's going to try to find her and everything. Well, the character is questioning this porn mogul, and and the porn mogul is being evasive and whatnot, and then things happen, and it turns out that the porn mogul is a vampire. They get into a fight, and my protagonist kills the vampire porn mogul by taking an industry award that is shaped like a dick, and it's silver, and he shoves it down the guy's throat.
Nice.
Vampire. I mean, it's a variation on staking, but silver can kill vampires.
Mm-hmm.
So I submit that to Bachelor Pad magazine. I don't know if you've ever heard of that or not. Mm-hmm. It's one of those retro men's magazines that has pinups and cocktail culture and tikis and things like that, and it's a really good publication. And Java Croft, who edits it, says, "No, don't think I can use this, but I've got this buddy who's got a magazine called Caveman, who
Hmm.
is always looking for stuff. So I sent it to him. He likes it. He pays me for it. And he says, "You got any more?" And I said, "Well, interesting that you should ask that, because I kind of want to find out if my protagonist ever finds the woman."
Hmm.
Okay. So 4 stories later, he finds the woman. And these are all published in Caveman magazine. And along the way, he asks me, um, he mentions that he'd like to see a novel involving this character.
Hmm.
So I said, "Funny you should mention that. I'm writing his origin story right now." Because I wrote the first chapter of that in another version of Fright Club. So I work that through, I give it to him, and on my birthday 2023, my first novel comes out.
Nice.
It's called Creative Control, and it involves this protagonist who is up against a cult that is in the thrall of a cult filmmaker who did very, very extreme and edgy and transgressive arty type films. And he was supposedly killed in a studio fire, but he wasn't. Okay. He's like Dr. Phibes.
Okay.
Okay. Um, Now, I think I should probably mention the character's name and how this works. He's a former porn star turned occult detective, and his name is Buck, Neighkyd. What does a horse say?
What does a
Nay,
horse say? Nay.
kid.
Nice. Now, all right. So you've been doing this for 2 years, and you have cranked out a lot of stories. I mean, you actually working on one right now as we speak.
Yep.
I just have a question. So, I mean, you've been doing this for 2 years, and I mean, you've cranked out many stories in that time frame. I mean, you're actually working on one right now. How are you able to get these out so quickly?
I do a lot of master plotting in my head before I put fingers on the keyboard. And so I plot prior, but I pants the actual execution. And I also write calls. I'm used to having to write stuff that is tied to a theme, and I have a lot of experience with trying to get things published in scholarly areas where you have to be on point with either what the conference is calling for or what the journal wants.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm real good at reading the journal's submission requirements and writing to that. Okay. And a lot of it's just luck. Okay. I mean, finding Doc Clancy, Caveman Magazine, and Quest Omnimedia, the Caveman Adventure Library. That's dumb luck. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Finding Crit and Psychotoxin Press. That's dumb luck. Okay. Finding Wicked Shadow Press. I just happened upon them one day. They were doing a call for zombie stories, and I had 5 days to write it. I wanted to see if I could do it, and I did it. And now they take most of my stuff as well. Find Al Vermette and Werewolf Magazine Reborn, which is ostensibly about werewolves, but also deals with transformation stories. I sold a story to that about Aware Dark. Okay.
Wow.
A lot of it's just dumb luck. Okay, here's the other part of it too. Okay. Like I said, I've only been doing this for 2 years. I'm going to retire in another year and a half. And my retirement is going to be given over to working in the horror industry, basically as a creative writer. And so I've got like a 3-year plan where the first 3 years are getting my name out there. So I don't discriminate as to where I try to publish. If I get paid, that's great. If I sell books, that's even greater. Okay. But the aim for these first 3 years is get my name out there and acquire a following. So it's basically, where can I publish? And, come up with something that's different for small. I'll give different. Okay. The other things that I'm working on right now is I was trolling the call the other day, and I always look for weird ones. This call for surf noir.
Okay.
My bad. They want something that, they want stories that are noir that are related to, that have a surfing element in them.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I've been doing of late, very serendipitously, I might add in retrospect, is I've been watching the Frankie and Annette beach party movies. So what do I come up with?
Mm-hmm.
I come up with something called the Big Fangool. Okay.
Tell me a little bit about this.
Okay. This is a story which is probably going to turn into another serial. And it's got a character, noirish detective type, who is kind of like a third build actor in a lot of things. And that's his cover for doing private eye work within the movie industry. Okay, but investigate stuff, porn film industry. This guy, his name is Vinny D'Arcangelo, but his screen name is Vinny Dark. So he's doing, and he does, within, in this case, it's a low budget film studio, which is modeled on American International Pictures, who made the Beach Party movies. And he's essentially been contracted by Frankie and Annette to find their daughter, who's in the and then oh hell, I'll just do this. I'll just give this because this is the plot. This is the thing within the plot. What he uncovers is a plot by the studio to kill Frankie and Annette's daughter and another character in a car crash that's going to be part of the film that they're going to use to create buzz about the film. And so the car that they use is something that they pulled together from scraps of all the other cars they've crashed in their.
That's an interesting concept.
I'm sorry, Travis?
That's an interesting concept.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And really, it's more for the voice than anything else. I'm really big on trying to nail the voice when I write this stuff. And I can hear Vinny talking, okay? He doesn't inhabit me, but I can hear him talking, and I can hear him telling the story. So basically what I'm doing is I'm transcribing Vinny telling me the story.
Amazing. And Rocky, and so I have a question.
Yeah.
Where can, but by the way, I'm gonna watch this. I'm gonna read on the wrestling one is next on my list, so I'm gonna be checking that one out soon.
Okay.
Where can everyone find you, my friend?
You can look me up on the Zon. I'm on Facebook. I'm always interested in talking to people. You know, I should tell you though, when you go to the Zon, you're going to see a lot of different stuff. Like there's 2 other wrestling books up there. There's one called "Who Was That Masked Fan," and there's another one called, and I just dropped this one this week. It's called "Christmas Chaos." Those are safe things. They're more like wrestling adjacent Hallmark movies. The first one's kind of a ghost story. I've gotten to be friends with this group of wrestlers that works out of Shelbyville, Indiana. And so I wrote, I don't know, they just interested me and I thought they'd make fun characters. And so I wrote a story about a promotion like this promotion that, you know, they're kind of struggling after COVID and everything. And one day this masked guy shows up at one of their shows and he starts having a positive effect on everyone. He knows wrestling. He, you know, and the masked guy takes a liking to this little kid who comes to the shows. And he works magic on the little kid. The kid is suddenly able to cut promos on some of the other wrestlers. He wins this contest where he gets to go up in the ring and talk to the audience. And so it's basically that, you know, it's a feel good type of thing. And then the second one is, you know, we're back in the town, and there's been, you know, work slowdowns. People are getting laid off, you know, and it's a tough time of year for everybody. And the protagonist from the first one has to put together a charity card for the town, and that's where the title comes from, Christmas Chaos. But the story starts right before Halloween, where the main character really gets dispirited because Christmas is out, you know, in Walmart. And I don't show this, and it's probably a wrong turn, but I published the book anyway without it. But there's reference to him nearly suplexing this lawn display, you know, this lawn display snowman at the big box store. So you're not what I'm, you know, what people don't realize is that I've got a lot of side. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my short stories are safe for public consumption. My extreme horror is a lot of the stuff that you'll see on Amazon, and I don't make any apologies for that. It's accomplishing its purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting noticed.
And also, too, definitely check out Psychotoxin Press as well. There's some good stuff on there as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and you know what's coming on Boneyard Psychotoxin, right?
What's that?
My novel called Smack Squatch.
Oh my goodness! Listen, so I did not, you know, you're the author of that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw my interview with Hart and Chris.
I did.
Okay, and they kept talking about Smack Squatch. I was like, what the hell is that? I want to see that. What is that? I did not know you were the author of Smack Squatch. Okay.
Here's the coming attraction. Starting in January, I'm going to start on the sequel.
Nice.
Meth Moth.
And just keep it on. Just keep it going, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of drugs.
Yeah,
play with.
Cryptid series.
Yes.
That one's going to be set in West Virginia, and it's going to involve Mothman.
He's on meth.
Yeah. And there's
Everyone.
a third one. I haven't decided what that one's going to be yet. See, I got series fiction going out the wazoo. Okay. I've got a series that's inspired by those Sci-Fi Channel films like Sharktopus and Piranhaconda.
I love those badass movies.
Okay. I'm nearly finished. This one's a 6-book series.
Mm-hmm.
Involves all things like that. And the first one, it has an ongoing character. This is the overarching title of the series is the Fafo Chronicles. The protagonist is this cleanup specialist who they call in when scientist experiments get out of control. So okay. The first one's critter is these scientists managed to pull a prehistoric sea scorpion out of the depths of the Pacific, and they mash up its DNA with that of a killer whale. So it's called Orcapion.
Love it. Love it. I love all that. I love all that fucking cheesy shit, man. I love that bean cheese sci-fi shit.
Well,
listen, Rocky, it's been an absolute pleasure. Everyone, please go to Psychotoxin Press. Check out his work as well as on Amazon. You can find his books. Listen, trigger warnings, all right? That's what we gotta say now. Trigger warnings. This shit is fucking extreme. And so, I mean, if you're a fucking gore whore or you like that fucking shit, if you like the sick shit, Rocky's your fucking man. Rocky's your fucking man if you like the fucking sick shit. For all you sick motherfuckers out there who like that sick shit, check out my man Rocky fucking shit.
Can I quote you on that, Travis? I'm always looking for good blurb.
Yes, that's a good one. This is a sick motherfucker right here. He has some sick shit. But guess what? It's artistic. It's artistic shit. Sick shit. See, I'm tongue tied now. But it's fun. It's interesting. But like, I'm telling you, do not fucking like. If you're squeamish, if you're easily whatever, like, don't fucking read this shit. Hardcore sick motherfuckers, read this shit. You'll be thanking the horror room for your sick body porn, grotesque blood and guts. You will love it. Rocky.
Music to my ears, dude.
Rocky, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, my friend. I would love to have you back on. I would love to have you back on and talk about Smack Squatch and what's that, Meth Moth and all that fucking shit, man. I love it.
To come back again, just let me know when.
I appreciate it, brother. All right, everyone.
And for the listeners,
yes,
stay reading, stay interested, but most of all, stay sick.
Stay sick. This is a sick motherfucker, guys. All right. Thank you for coming to the horror room. I'm Travis Bruce. I'll see you guys next time. Take care.